Good morning, my dear fellow parliamentarians. Canada just had an elections, and it was the second within the COVID. I wrote an op-ed that it was called Bring Governments Back Better. Throughout these horrible times of pandemic, one truth resonated through all these 4 waves of COVID-19, that COVID-19 did not break the system. It exposed a broken system. Indeed, we need democracy back, stronger, wiser, and more open to new ideas, with all of its decisions covered by checks and balances that needs to be restored. Thank you so much to the IPU and the British branch to invited me into this historical venue and to have this time to talk to you. Honorable guests, it is with great pleasure that I participate in this IPU Parliamentary Meeting to discuss our role as parliamentarians in the fight against climate change. We will be the ones holding governments accountable, ensuring that they act decisively to reach our goals and advocating for a more ambitious plan. Today, I would like to offer my insights on the incredible and transformative opportunity we have across the world to reshape our economies by aligning them with our climate commitments. Several months into the COVID-19 pandemic, it became clear for many of us, governments around all over the world, especially in the developed country, that we had to inject unprecedented amount of money to support its citizens and to recover from the socioeconomic crisis provoked that lockdown. Isn't it interesting to say that when our economy was consumers were buying just basic needs products, our economy went down, and that threats of inflation and depression loom in the sky? What does that tell about our economy that is based on buying stuff that is not basic? These lockdown conditions have taken a disproportionate toll on lower-income individuals, the elderly, and groups who already bear a degree of structural oppression. Further, the pandemic has revealed a system where we exploit the finite natural resources of our planet with the illogical expectation of infinite growth. Yesterday, I heard instead of using GDP, we should think and create a green DP. And governments subsidize environmental behavior through support of polluting industries and corporations. There are so many reasons because I'm proud to be Canadian and proud to be from Quebec that just declared that we are going to leave our natural oil resources in the ground. But at the same time, Canada is in the top of the G7 countries giving and providing subsidies to the oil and gas. The IPCC has said unequivocally that is the human activities. I just wish they would say too that is CO2 and that sources of that CO2 and methane are oil, gas, and coal. Unbridled economic growth is the root cause of ecological destabilization. As stimulus began to flow, I started reflecting on the ultimate goal and the most efficient way to achieve it. These reflections led to the publication of a white paper entitled Building Forward Better, a Clean and Just Recovery from the COVID-19 Pandemic, publicly available in 3 languages at my website. It draws inspiration from various organizations, including here from Oxford in the UK, advocating for a holistic approach to rebuilding Canadian society to achieve greater and overall collective well-being by proposing specific public policies in great detail. It also addressed the funding of a clean recovery, where and how the funds can be recouped, and included a set of core policy recommendations. Although this white paper is focused, of course, on the Canadian experience, these proposed policies, and because I also wear the hat of Parliament as president of the Network on Climate Change, there are many of these policies that can be applied also to developing countries. And you will find the principles in which they are based and how they can be applicable across the world. A clean and just recovery is one that puts people before and focus on furthering and eventually achieving human and ecosystem well-being. We need an indicator of well-being and use it when we discuss our budgets. GDP doesn't take in consideration many things. In Canada, the governor of the Bank of Canada after Mark Carney, he told me, Senator Galvez, do you know that GDP in Canada doesn't take in consideration our aging population and that there is a big fraction of our Canadian population taking their pensions and that this will destabilize our economy? Who's going to pay these retirement plans? So I challenge him to think about another indicators that will reflect better what is the state of our economy. Such a goal implies the development of principles and tools that not only ensure the costs and benefits of the recovery and that are distributed equitably, but also help shift our concept of growth to be centered around sustainable prosperity. There are many names. I know we cannot be blocked and find obstacles in defining the name. It's the concept. We want to think in more than short-termism. In Canada, Indigenous people think in terms of 7 generations. My grandparents in the Andes, in the jungle, or in the Amazon, always thought in 3 generations. After all, the economy must serve society, not the other way around. Also, we can change our socioeconomic models, but we cannot change the planetary laws. We cannot change gravity. So we have to change what we can change, which is our socioeconomic models. Traditional stimulus measures often have a poor governance and transparency track record, unfortunately. Looking forward, we must worry about reinforcing a status quo of keep with investment into soon-to-be stranded assets. We know that banks and finances and governments and crown corporations and government organizations are still financing oil and gas. We are already very worried about the stranded assets and the environmental passives of many of these oil extractions. So this is unnecessary exposure to financial risk, and it increases inequality. All policies must be scrutinized through gender, social justice, and climate lenses, which must be rapidly developed and implemented, as well as carry a strict measure for accountability and transparency. With the wave of environmental protest, I am here, this is the second week I'm here, and I know that there is an official COP26 going on in these venues, but there is also an unofficial COP going on in the streets of Glasgow. And I was walking one night and I heard so many languages. This is not only British people, Scottish people walking. I heard many languages, Portuguese, Spanish, German. So we have to hear their discontent with current climate action and their plea to transition to a low carbon economy. In fact, you know, for us to call a transition, it should have had a beginning and an end, and it'd be very short. We passed that. We passed 30 years, we are talking about transition. What we need now is a transformation. In fact, due to inaction and delay, which has hampered this transition for the past 3 decades, we now need a rapid and far-reaching transformation. Several positive announcements in this week of COP26 are encouraging. Yes, including my fellow Canadian, Mr. Carney, the UN Special Envoy on Climate Action and Finance announcement of the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, committed of over 130 trillion of private capital to transform the economy towards net zero, and that 20 countries, including Canada, promised that they will shift public finances away from fossil fuels before the end of 2022. In recent speeches, Mr. Mark Carney has said that it is now the time to start fiddling with the wonky plumbing of the financial world if we are to succeed in this transformation. I could not agree more. After decades of international discussion about climate change and promotion of voluntary actions, the financial and private investment sector is still massively supporting high-emitting polluters, putting barriers into our race, this healthy race that we need to hold to reach net zero before 2050. This must change, and we legislators have the power to act and to do this transformation. Despite ever-expanding data and climate risk disclosure just aren't enough. Legal and commercial incentives for business and investors to act. Listen to this. In November 2020, the Financial Times reported that an HSBC survey of 2,000 investors found that just only 10% view the climate disclosure as a relevant source of information. The story quoted Carsten Young, a former Bank of England economist who worked on climate disclosure rule, and he said, and I quote, "Many firms may discuss risk and do exactly nothing to advance the transition." In other words, don't expect climate-related financial disclosure to result in the real-world changes that we need. Unfortunately, too many of the largest investors still operate under the interpretation that fiduciary duties, where social and environmental issues can be considered only if they reduce financial risk or increase financial return in measurable ways. Banks, which are critical influential actors in any economy, currently have no regulatory or commercial incentive to lead the way and reduce the carbon footprint of their loan portfolios. Then, legislative action is necessary and essential to provoke the change and transformation that we desperately need. We must require that financial activities align with and support achieving climate commitments. We must make banks' capital reserve requirements and pensions funding requirements as a direct function of the carbon exposure of their portfolios. We must specify that fiduciary duties of corporate directors, pension plan administrators, and other fiduciaries require that their investment align with climate commitments and specific plans in that regard. Aligning finance with climate committees must start with national public finances, and there is where we act, namely with crown and government-owned corporations by eliminating fossil fuel subsidies. We cannot progress and then come back, progress and then come back at this time. We cannot, with one hand, finance pipelines and still giving subsidies, and on the other hand, say we need to go into renewable energy. We have to have bold, strong, and clear message. Nations must lead by example. The world needs more leaders that will tackle both risks with equal pressure, protecting, yes, the financial institution from increasing climate-related risk, but also at the same time protecting humans and our only dear planet Earth A, there's no planet B, from irresponsible financial decisions. I hope you are with me and that we will work together. I am in Canada and my office will be always open to discuss further any of these subjects that I brought for you today. Thank you so much.